Well, I have joining me a former executive with the World Bank and a member of the Directorate of Media of the PDP Presidential Campaign Council. He's been a consultant in many regards. Dr. Emeka Okengo joins us on the program. Thank you for joining us on the program.
It's a pleasure.
But before we get talking with my guest here, let me bring the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman, Mr. Kayode Idowu, to talk to us on some of the developments that is going on concerning the PVC and also the card reader. He joins us now via Skype from Abuja. Hi, Mr. Idowu. Thank you for joining us on Politics Today. Tell us, we've seen so many extension of the deadline for this PVC. Could this be the last?
Thank you so for having your program tonight. You are absolutely right that this is very likely to be the last, and the statement makes that clear. Because we have had extensions for this long, and by the time this extension elapses, the Commission will be very set to go ahead with the elections. So people are encouraged and enjoined to use this last opportunity to pick up the card.
You said last opportunity. Of course, a lot of Nigerians are looking forward. When INEC chairman said that, well, a modest figure to look at for the distribution is perhaps 85%. So are you sure that the Commission will be able to distribute 85% of the PVC before the 22nd of March?
At no time did the INEC chairman give a figure that he considers to be a threshold that has to be set for this election. The argument of the Commission actually has been that it does not make sense to set a threshold before determining or setting a particular figure as the acceptable threshold for the elections. Because what that means is that you can't go into an election, you can't fix the date of an elections until that threshold is met. And you never know when that threshold will be met. Whether it is 80, whether it is 90, you never know when people will come out to collect as many as 90%. And so you will not be able to set the date for the elections. So the argument of the Commission has always been that it has a responsibility to produce all the cards for people who have been duly registered. And when those cards have been produced and they are put out there, people who are available to collect their cards will collect their cards. And those who are not available to do that, there's nothing INEC can do about that.
All right, interesting. For what we have seen so far now, going forward, the PVC, the deadline, the new deadline that you have set is 22nd, and of course the first election is 28th. There are hopes now because in some states like Ogun, from the list that you've given us, in some states like Ogun State, we've seen very, very low distribution rates there. And in some other states also, like Lagos just, I guess, passed the threshold of 65, very close to 70% or thereabout. From your own judgment, what figure will be comfortable to you? And what are the things delaying people, or why are people not coming out in some states to collect their PVCs?
That is the big question, Shehu. Why are people not coming out? In a place like Ogun, for instance, the state office has repeatedly said, as it stands today, they have more than 500,000. That was actually before the balance. I'm aware that certain PVCs were also delivered to the state this weekend for those whose PVCs were not ready before now. But even before this latest complement, there were more than 500,000 cards belonging to people who registered in the states who had not collected them. So we can interrogate why they are not coming out. But the bottom line is that we are in a country where there's no law that compels anybody to pick up the cards. There's no law that compels anybody to participate in elections. And so there's no law that the Commission or anybody else can use to say you are compelled to come and pick pick up this card. So all we can do is to keep on encouraging and mobilizing people and hoping that people will pick up the interest to come and pick up the cards.
All right, interesting. Let's quickly leave the issue of the PVC distribution and move to the issue. Coincidentally, today is supposed to be the former deadline. Of course, you've now shifted it. But let's go into the issue of the card reader. It has generated a lot of controversy. And of course, I know that you must have heard some political parties threatening to boycott the elections if INEC goes ahead to use the card readers.
Yes, I heard that in the media, but I will not take issue with those parties because we are well aware that some of these matters that are being peddled out there are also before courts of law. And because they are before courts of law, it will not be appropriate to join issues with those things.
So that means the commission is going ahead to use these card readers?
Oh, of course. Look, we did a public demonstration yesterday. Is there a good reason? Give me a good reason why you think it is not proper for the commission to go ahead.
So in your view, in your own view, you think that the testing that was conducted in 12 states of the Federation yesterday, that is on Saturday, do you think that the card readers has passed the test?
Honest, I have listened to various reports on this matter and on all manners of platforms, conventional media, broadcast, print, online. And the general view that I've seen is that the demonstration, actually it's more of the public demonstration, not the testing, because the testing had been done, simulation testing had been done prior to the February 14 rescheduling. So, but the public demonstration that was done yesterday was largely successful. There was no report of device failures. Yes, there were issues of some states where they talked about the fingerprint not being authenticated. And those are part of the things that the commission had projected for. Because you've traveled, you travel every now and then, you go to the embassy, you go to the banks, you put your hands on these fingerprint scanners, sometimes they pick your fingerprint, sometimes they don't. So it's not peculiar to INEC card readers. It's a general phenomenon. And so the commission agreed with political parties that where you have cases of a certain person bringing a card that has been confirmed by the card reader to be an INEC card, in other words, it's not a cloned card, and it is also confirmed that the person presenting the card is the legitimate holder of the card, but for whatever reason, either because the fingerprints are not sensitive enough or for any other reason, the fingerprints could not be authenticated, an incident form can be filled such that the person will not be hindered from casting his or her vote. But in some states, really, Lagos is one, Delta is another, there was more than 95% success rate, even with the authentication of fingerprints. So I mean, what good basis will you say there is to say this hasn't been a success of sorts?
All right. Mr. Kayode Idowu, just before I allow you go, just briefly tell us, you've talked about the incident form, but it does look like you are digging the grave for the card reader itself, because when you say you provided an incident form, and that means that one can actually jump that process of going through the card reader, which you said is somewhat like a magic wand for the commission to make sure that it deters people who want to subvert the process. But now when you provide the incident form, that means you don't need to go through the card reader. So
Absolutely
you can, in
not.
some areas, they can provide as much incident form as possible. Meanwhile, the card readers will be useless.
No, that's not true. Don't forget, you don't fill an incident form until you have passed through the stage of the card reader.
Yeah, understandably, but don't you think that could be used to subvert the process?
How?
I mean, if there are incident forms, and people want to be fraudulent about the process, don't you think they will just ignore the card reader, and just go ahead with the incident form?
No, that's the process I'm telling you. You don't just go and fill the incident form. I've read that line in some papers today, and I think it's comical. You do not just go ahead and fill an incident form. The procedure is you arrive at the polling unit, you submit your card. Number one, that card is checked to confirm that it is an INEC card. There were reports that, if I remember rightly, Rivers State, a card that was on an INEC card was presented, and the card reader did not read the card, which is one of the things the card reader does. You present a card that is not from INEC, it will not be read, you will not be able to proceed. So now, when you present the card and it is checked that it is an INEC card, every card must pass that test. Then you put your fingerprints on the scanner. That is the second step. Everybody, 100%, must go through the first step. The second step, where you have incidents of people who have passed the first test, but now, having confirmed that the card, because don't forget, number one, their picture is on the face of the card reader. The biometrics that pops up on the face of the card reader. You can compare the picture on the card reader that pops up from the biometric chip with the face of the person presenting the card, and also with the face that is in the register. You confirm that this is one and the same person. So legitimately, there's no doubt that he is the holder of the card. So if that happens, the presiding officer, on being convinced that this is just a case of this fingerprint not being sensitive enough for the scanner, will fill an incident form for that person to be able to cast his or her vote. Now, there's been nothing untoward that, because in any event, the card reader will do a tabulation, a tally of those whose fingerprints were, because every card is read, so it has the total number of the cards that are read. Then out of the total number of cards that are read, those whose fingerprints are authenticated, it will keep that tally. Those whose fingerprints are not authenticated, it will keep that tally. Now, when the tally is, those figures are sent to INEC Central Server, you expect to see those that are authenticated and the complement of those who are not authenticated will be in form of incident forms that will confirm the total of the cards that are read at that polling unit.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Kayode Idowu, the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman, talking to us via Skype from Abuja. Thank you so much for your time.